save it, because what I was going
Yeah,
to suggest
I-
was, if you can, when I got my iPad, you airdrop it to me and
Yeah.
I'll post it on my video channel.
Oh, good idea.
Hello, everybody. We're a couple of minutes, well, I think we're maybe 30 seconds early. We'll see how many people. So up on the upper left of the screen, it will tell us how many people are
With
joining.
my varifocals, I got trouble.
Oh, I know.
Where does it oh, I can
So
see.
yeah,
I can
up on
see.
the left. So
There
it
we
tells you
go.
that.
Yeah.
So it tells you that we're live. Yeah.
Oh,
So
Oh,
hello to
we
who's
got
watching.
3 people. Hey, people. So if you have not already done so, be sure to click on the link for StreamYard Facebook so that if you're posting from Facebook, we can see your name. Because otherwise we can't see your name. I'll log into Facebook so I can see the comments from there. But,
Oh,
yeah.
good.
But we're really happy that you can join us this morning. So I'm Cathe from Nicola and Haystack.
I'm Cheri from here.
And I'm Nicola from Hands Across the Sea Samplers in Cornwall, England.
So today we want to start our official kickoff of our Sarah Rinder Stitch Along.
Yay!
We have waited and waited. We're so happy.
This has been such a long time coming. This is
Yeah.
this was first planned.
Almost 2 years ago.
No, longer than that, before COVID.
Oh
When we were here,
Oh, I'd forgotten it was that long ago.
January
Wow.
2020.
January 2020.
Wow. That is.
Yeah, COVID
That's a
derailed a
long
lot
one.
of things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like
And-
this black hole of time.
It is.
That happened,
It is.
yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like I can't quite figure out where everything is. Let's see. So we have Jody and Kim and okay, Facebook user from Copenhagen. Type your name in, and I'll bring up the Facebook feed so I can see it.
Oh, good.
So we're gonna do as not a long one as we thought we would originally plan for today, because we were gonna talk about the model, but Sarah and Hannah decided to take a detour through Dallas last night for Nicola's flight, and she has to go pick them up at the airport in Phoenix after we're done here. They
Didn't
make
make the
didn't make it
plane.
onto the plane, or they decided to go party and drive down to Austin for the night and then came back.
When I was about to get on the plane at Dallas, my air tag was telling me that my bags were in Terminal D when I was flying out of Terminal C. And I spoke to an official and they kept on assuring me that they would be on the plane and the air tag was showing the wrong information. Well, they were not on the plane. And when I got to Phoenix last night and my air tag was showing still in Dallas, I thought I was actually going to be physically sick.
Yeah.
So I messaged you both straight
Yes,
away.
you did.
So I've been awake all night looking at my air tag, and 6 o'clock this morning, Arizona time, it showed that it was in Albany in Texas. And I think what it was, as it was flying from Dallas.
Oh,
Yes,
that
it
would
was
make
picking
sense.
up.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's now showing that it's on the baggage carousel in Phoenix, but there was just not enough time to dash back to the airport and make this live video. So as soon as this is finished, I'm going straight to the airport and hopefully I can get my case. And then we will show the model of Sarah in another video.
But
over
we'll
the
do it
weekend.
sometime over the weekend. We'll do another quick
And
one.
you might say, why are you checking samplers? I don't normally, but Hannah Campbell and Sarah were just too big to have as carry-on. That's why I invested in an air tag. So that's what I did.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's see. So Kristen's here from Martha's Vineyard. Louise is here from Scotland.
Hi, Louisa.
Oh, we have such an amazing group from all over the world.
And Suzanne is the one that's in the Netherlands.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hello.
That's in Copenhagen.
Needlework. It's the threads that pull us all together
Yes.
all around
Yeah.
the world.
Yes.
At breakfast this morning, I was sitting with Melissa and Linda and Michelle, and the last time we were all together, we were in New York, the four of us, and we just gathered around the breakfast table, and you would never have thought there had been a gap between when we said goodbye in New York last year to when we sat down at breakfast today. Needlework just gives us this sisterhood, brotherhood, stitching hood.
Yeah, even if you have so many other differences, whether it's geographic or whether it's other things, like it's a thing that, like you said, it's the thread that binds us
Binds us
together.
all together, and social media facilitates that.
Well, my husband, even this morning as I was getting ready to leave the house, he goes, "You have met a lot of really great women, haven't you?" I said, "Yes." I said, "I've even met some men that cross stitch,
Oh,
which
yeah.
has been really fun."
Yeah,
So yeah, it's a great community to be a part of.
Absolutely.
Great community.
So you have started on
I
Sarah?
have. So I took my first stitch last night because again, we were going to try and actually actively stitch, and that isn't going to happen at this moment, but we will still actively stitch later. So I had got everything set up and took my first stitch. And I am stitching on the 56 count vintage maple sugar. And I love stitching on 56 counts. I like the challenge
And
of it.
somebody asked about, I'm gonna get up for a second.
And I am using the Swasserfine conversion for that, which is just as glorious as the 103. And
So, someone had asked I think in a previous live or via email, how much difference there was in the dye lots. So this is 28 count, and that's
Shall I
56.
pass it up to the camera?
yeah.
So 56. So
You can see how it's
this is
darker.
28, and the one with the hoop in it's 56. So the reason that happens is that so if you get hand dyed fabrics, Swagart in particular, the 28 and the 32 count are actually woven from the same base thread. So they spin the thread, put it on these big cones. Those things get loaded into the weaving machines. The 28 and the 32 use the exact same base thread, so they dye the same. But the 36, the 40, the 46, the 56, those are all 4 different base threads. So they all dye differently. So if you take a piece of fabric from each and throw them in, only the 28 and the 32 will look the most alike. It gets slightly lighter.
Yes.
The
That's what I was
thinner
gonna
the
say.
thread gets.
Yeah.
When we're reproducing a sampler, I need to know who's going to model stitch it and what stitch count.
Right.
Because that's the mini that I match to the antique sampler.
Right.
Oh,
In the
that makes
stitch
sense.
counts.
That makes sense.
Because
Yes.
otherwise, if I match it to 56, which I like stitching on, and they're going to be stitching it on 46, it will be a slightly different colour.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah.
And we've got Elizabeth from Switzerland, Nadine from Southern
Hi,
Germany,
Elizabeth.
Oh my goodness,
And
this is
Nadine.
awesome.
and Susan Cook from Bristol, Tennessee.
Ah!
I didn't know there was a Bristol in Tennessee.
See, we're hands across the
So,
sea.
so
We are, we absolutely
Susan, are you
are.
actually going to stitch Hannah or stitch Sarah on Bristol? That might be.
Oh, 46
On the
Bristol,
46
yeah.
count.
46 count, that might be. Central Florida, Kim is from Evergreen, Colorado. Pittsburgh. Oh, Robin is from Pittsburgh, but she's leaving for Arizona.
See you soon, Robin.
Yes.
Well, shall we
Come
hold?
join us in
Shall
the
we hold the margaritas for you?
Exactly. It's just, she is, Sarah, I'm gonna hold up the pattern for just a minute. Sarah is just so beautiful. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, this is opposite way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's like
giving
flipped
us
it.
a little flip there.
For us, I always want to try and find something that's different. Because if you have a wall and everything looks the same,
Right.
nothing stands out. Whereas if you have a wall of different samplers,
Yeah.
each one stands out.
Yes.
And that's a weird thing, isn't
Yes.
it? That
Each one has its own beauty and its own reason for
it's
shining.
shining. Yeah.
Well, and when you and I talked about, such a long time ago about doing one, and you showed me this one, I'm normally I see birds in a sampler as the individual little motifs. You get the little
Yeah.
crows, you might get a dove of some kind,
Right.
but you don't get the full blown party time.
No.
And I just liked that it was really different.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and that it's attractive and different as opposed to
Yes.
it's just different.
And we talk about it being different, but we do know of one other sampler
Yeah.
that is almost identical to this sampler, and it's currently for sale on eBay for $2,000.
Oh
Yes.
my goodness.
I offered to buy it, but they wouldn't accept the price.
They did
I
not.
wasn't going to pay $2,000.
So,
My husband was rolling his eyes at me.
Yeah.
Never.
so this is obviously a sampler that that was taught in a school, and we know that Sarah was from Yorkshire. She was born in Holbeck, Yorkshire. So I think in this country you have All Creatures Great and Small. About
Oh,
James
yes,
Herriot. That's
Yes.
Yorkshire country, and it's God's country. Very, very beautiful. And it's lovely to know a little bit about Sarah.
It is.
I think that always helps me bond.
Well, I think
with her.
I think with any of the samplers, knowing a bit about the girls or women or occasionally the boys or men who stitch them lends a different element of interest to them,
Yeah,
because they're leaving a piece of themselves in history in there.
absolutely.
And I think as stitchers we value that sometimes more than a lot of other people do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like probably the only other memorial to Sarah might be a headstone.
Yeah.
Right.
Somewhere. It might not even be able to be read any longer because it could be so weathered. They have
Right.
a lot of weather in Yorkshire. But this is
A tangible. Yeah.
Yeah, a link to this girl.
And you said that the original sampler is in very
oh, it's terrible.
not tattered, but it's just very thin.
Sandra describes it as being like Weetabix. Every time
Okay.
you handle the sampler, it just
Price checks.
it
Oh.
disintegrates.
Oh.
So she has it laid in a special flat box over tissue, and every time she touches it, it literally a little bit more disintegrates.
Oh,
Which
well,
is-
it's so good
Where did she
that
find
it's
it?
been
I bought
Or where did you find it?
I bought the sampler from auction, and what I did so that Sandra could have the thrill of being the first one to see the sampler when it arrived with me. We always engage a special company that goes to the auction house and packs them and sends them to me. I sent that box as it was to Sandra so that she could have
Oh.
the joy of
Oh,
owning it. So
wow.
I have never actually seen in the flesh the original sampler.
Oh my
But
gosh.
it was Sandra's privilege
Right.
to see that
Right,
sampler.
to get to do that this
Yeah.
time.
And
Oh,
she
that's
just loved
amazing.
it. And of course, Leona, who stitched the model, hi Leona if you're watching, Leona loves birds. And she loves these beautiful borders. And the one thing about Sarah is this really gorgeous
Oh, yeah.
border. This just had Leona's name on it. And if you see the model, if I can get it later on today, you'll see how perfectly it's stitched. Every single stitch on that. Is just
Well, Leona is amazing.
yeah, absolutely.
She is an amazing model stitcher. She's what I want to
And
grow
she's a
up
very
to be.
sweet lady.
And she is.
Yeah.
I love
Very
Leona.
gifted lady. Not just for cross stitch, but Leona does absolutely amazing finishing on
Yes.
floors and very creative with her finishing as well.
She does. She does.
So-
She's amazing.
Okay.
Yes.
So talking about borders,
Yes.
something that came to light is an error in the border, and this is really annoying because when Leona stitched the sampler, she picked up 5 mistakes in the graph which were corrected, and when this was finished, Sandra sent me the master file which I imported into the charting program. Sandra and I have got identical charting programs, and because I had the original one in that she sent me, when I imported the up-to-date master file, it asked me if I wanted to overwrite it. I said yes, and it did not. And when this came to light, I thought I must be going mad. So I tried to re-import it, and the same thing happened. It doesn't save it.
Okay.
So in this border, oh God, this is so cool. Right. This little, hang on, wrong hand. This is back
yeah.
to front.
Yeah.
This little section here has to drop down one row, and when you get to here, it becomes right. If you've already stitched it, I wouldn't worry about it. Just carry on stitching it as charted. You're not going to notice 2 threads of linen while the sampler is finished.
No, and
Right.
and also too, as I tell people, it's like when you're stitching on a piece, you're stitching with it like here.
Yeah.
When
Right.
you're admiring a piece, granted you might get up close to it to just like see what a stitch looks
Mhm.
like or a color looks like, but you're not really scrutinizing it. Or as
Yeah.
my contractor friend says, familiarity breeds acceptance.
That was good when you told
Yes,
me
I
that.
like
You
that.
know, it's like after a while,
Yes.
you won't even, you might remember, oh, there were a couple things, but I'd have to go find where the notes were.
That's
for that.
right,
They are all extremely minor.
Absolutely. But it's a funny thing, because the day this came to light on the Sunday, before the end of Sunday, I was actually sending another reproduction to print, and it was one of Sandra's and Leona's, and I thought, I'm going to check that now, and it had done exactly the same with that.
Oh my gosh.
So I
So
had
now
the
you've got to take a
opportunity.
different
to fix it.
approach.
So I had the opportunity to sort that out before it went to print.
Oh, good.
And what I had to do, I had to delete the original file off my program to re-import what was then a fresh file. So things happen for reasons. Like,
Yeah.
it was such a shock to wake up that Sunday morning and read on social media. I was like, oh my God, because I hate things like
I know.
this.
So for all of you who've already gotten your charts, or they've been shipped and they're in transit, I sent an email to everyone who was in that status on Tuesday with a link to the corrections. If you're not, so if you have friends that are stitching this and aren't part of Facebook, or you're watching this on YouTube and you're not part of the Facebook group, you've been emailed the correction, where to pick up the corrections. For those of you that are still waiting for stuff, that email will come when your order ships of it. But we're not going to correct the printed version, because that would just be way too expensive.
Well,
And there's not really a point to it. Yeah.
There's no need.
Yeah.
We apologise, we don't like it, but we have done something about it.
Right,
So,
yeah.
Right. And it was something
Absolutely.
that was literally beyond our control.
So the one-page master PDF, for those of you who like to use Pattern Keeper or something like that, that has been corrected. So there's a link to that in the email, and when your order ships, you'll get a link to that. And then there's a link to the same file that's in the Facebook files group, part of the tab, with the color part of what's in the chart for those 5 corrections. So it's pretty easy to pick up where those
And
are.
the rest of them are very minor, it's like an odd stray stitch.
Yeah, it was an odd
Yeah.
blue stitch somewhere.
Yeah.
There was a missing end of, I think, an L.
There's an extra stitch and a D.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But in added, there's 3 Ds, and it's the last D that's an extra
Okay.
stitch. So all
So,
very minor.
all very minor things.
But it actually gives you the opportunity to see that no matter how careful you are when you're charting, there'll always be little anomalies, and that's one of the reasons why we always like to have a model stitch, because it's not just providing you with something to photograph to put on the front of the booklet,
Right.
it's proofreading the the chart as well. I think that's very, very important.
And
Absolutely.
Cheryl says that her Sarah kit is out for delivery, so
Yay!
she's going to get hers today, and she'll get
That
to
is
start
And
it.
talking of
She'll get to
kits,
start it too.
we've got kits here.
Yeah,
haven't
so we brought various bits. So those of you who watched early on, this is actually the bouquet. You want to hold that up, Nicola?
This is one of my favourite parts of the the sample. I love that bouquet. Oops, this is very confusing.
It is. You have to think backwards. It's like looking
Yeah,
in
but
the
I'm
mirror.
dyslexic. I have a problem between my right and my left. When we're driving in the car, Ray goes, "Which way should I go?" And I go, "Turn left."
Just follow my hand.
Follow my do as I point, not as I say.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
these are the. So I had this out earlier. This is the 28 count of the fabric.
And
I
that's quite a difference.
yeah, and
Yeah, quite a different
So
color.
Pat from Lakeside is actually attending Bristol this weekend with us, and so she's actually bringing me a piece of 46
Oh, wonderful.
because they're still dyeing 46. Because I wanted to show what the difference looked like on the 46. Because when I sent Leona the 46 count stitched model on, that was 2 years ago. So it's like I don't know.
No,
Wow.
It wasn't 2 years ago. It was
3 years ago. It was so far ago. I've forgotten
It's
now.
3 years ago.
Again, that black hole of
That
time.
black hole of time. So then these are all of the. So that's all the Soie d'Alger colors.
And the colours in Sarah are very, very beautiful.
But my favorites are, and granted the colors are very similar, but my favorites are always the SWAT 100s.
With SWA 103, there is a depth of colour.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's you
The
can't explain
it's like the color is saturated into the thread more.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too about the SWA 100 and the SWA Surfine is because they're a tightly twisted thread, there's actually more surface area
Yes.
in the threads, and so you get a more reflection on it than you get even from the stranded silk from the Soie d'Alger.
When I'm doing the conversions for our charts, we always provide DMC,
Right.
SAL
And here's the
Soie
DMC
d'Alger.
one, and the DMC one
It's
is really lovely.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I like that blue.
Oh, that makes
That blue just really pops.
and that beautiful
And that dark purple.
yeah.
Yeah.
When I'm doing the conversions, the intensity of colour in the 103 really stands out when
Right.
you're looking at the
Yeah.
other colours. It's just so beautiful. And about a week, 10 days ago, somebody posted on our sampliers about having problems with the knots on the back of their work.
Yes.
And basically, Soie 103, if you know how to handle it, is one of the most joyous silks that you can get to stitch with. And it's all about untwisting your needle as you're stitching. And you do that by rolling your needle in your fingers as you're pulling your thread up.
Do you want to show how you
Okay.
do that?
Let's see if it's difficult to explain. And Ray says, I never explain things properly. He says it's in Nicola's brain. Right, so if you think about it, if you have a thread and as you're stitching, you are twisting that thread by the way you're putting your needle up and down, what happens? It twists up on itself. So that occurs by the way you put your needle down and bring it back up. So what you have to do, if you untwist it, that kink comes out.
Yeah, I just
So-
dangle mine and let it undo
Yeah, but
periodically.
what you can do is as you bring it up, just roll it slightly in your finger, only a fraction, and it will never twist up on itself, and you will not get knots on the back. And it's just that little roll action
Yes.
that does it.
Well, and it also depends too on whether you're a left-handed or right-handed
Exactly.
stitcher.
So you might
Because
have
you
to
have to
roll
learn.
Because
it.
the twister, because so threads are either Z or S twist.
Yeah.
So if you're right-handed, most threads will over tighten as
Yeah.
you stitch because you tend to roll this way. You're left-handed, you roll the other way.
So you either roll it in your finger clockwise or
Or
anti-clockwise, and you will only know what works for you when
you
you
try.
do
Right.
a test piece.
Yeah.
Lovely. And I stitch predominantly on a frame. So my left hand is on the top and my right hand is on the bottom. When I stitch on a hoop, I'm only using my right hand and I have to compensate in a slightly
Right.
different way.
Right.
And I don't stitch in either. I stitch in hand.
Yes.
So
we're
I'm
all,
stitching-
We're all different. 'Cause
So
a
I'm
hoop stitcher.
stitching, I do a lot of, if I'm doing bigger areas, I do sewing motion. And even if I do stick and stab, I'm still doing it in hand for the most part.
Are we having any questions?
Let's see. So Jennifer said, I'm using DMC to stitch Sarah, and the 3771 and 3770 have no difference in color. Any suggestions? Send me an email to the shop. Send it to haystack@needlestack.com, and I'll see if I can find. So 3773. You're talking about the two pinks. So there's 3779.
And 3771.
And it's
32.
52.
3371 is a black brown.
No, there's a 3771. She's talking about those two.
3770.
the two
Oh, the
Oh,
terracotta.
it's because, yes, they are different, but not by a huge amount. And that's because 3779 is actually a pink color, and the 3771 is actually a slightly peach color. So they are intended to be somewhat close,
Yeah.
but slightly different tones of pink and peach. So
Yeah.
that's why.
And those nuances are very important.
Particularly
They
for
are.
things like flowers and birds.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why. The 3771 is a peachy tone, the 3779 is more of a rosy
So
tone.
DMC described 3771 as an ultralight terracotta.
Yeah, that is kind of what it looks like.
Yeah.
It's got that orangey cast to it.
Yeah. And of course, you see, everybody sees colour differently.
Yes.
But the three of us will see colour differently. I can see straight away the difference between those two.
So can I,
Yeah.
actually.
But somebody else might not. And Ray, sometimes when I'm pulling colours, he looks and he says, He
That's
can't
my
see.
husband and my daughter
And
all
my
the time. They
and my
can't see the
husband as well. My
difference.
husband tends to think and see in sort of the basic primary colors.
Yeah.
So like there could be 5 shades of red, and he might actually really be able to see the difference, but he doesn't know how to describe it. So to him, they're just all reds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that you will see colour differently in different light settings.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
And at different times of the day, because in the morning our eyes are fresh. By the end of the afternoon,
Depends on if you or Sarah and Hannah have been off partying all night.
Yeah,
Maybe not.
You know, so when I'm pulling colours, I always make a point of being in exactly the same position, and I do
okay.
it in the morning
Yeah.
when my
Gotcha.
eyes are at their freshest.
Yes.
So I
Absolutely.
otherwise,
And-
if you're looking at it time and time again over the weeks as you're working with it, you're just constantly changing your choices. You've got to be fixed about
I hadn't
time
thought
of
about
day
that. That makes
Right.
sense.
and your
Yeah.
the place in which you choose your threads. I could go from
So that
to
you
a
have
different
consistent
room
lighting.
and
And
threads
then
could
think
look
you want to
different.
do something different. Yeah, that makes
that's really
sense.
important. Colour's a very strange thing.
Well, and I think people also describe colors differently, and I think that so in the case of those two, somebody else might still be able to see the difference between them, but they might have a different explanation for what they are,
Yeah.
or they might not be able to. One of the places I had my shop for a few years, when we were doing some work on it, the architect who was responsible for the building came in, and he was just amazed at all the colors because he just thought it was like basically having crayons all over the wall, so to speak. And he said we were talking about lighting because we had to fix the lighting in our part of the building, and he said, "Can you explain to me why it's important?" And I took him and stood him over by the wall of the Soie d'Alger, and I said, "Do you see those 5 shades of yellow there?" I said, "I need to be able to tell all those 5 shades apart, not having them in my eyes here, but having them here."
Exactly.
And he stood there for a minute and he looked at them and he goes, "Okay, having gone through the process of repainting, I think it was their bathroom," he said, "I understand what you mean now." He said, we will get it fixed."
Wonderful.
So I think sometimes too, it's just the understanding that light's such a key
Absolutely.
aspect to this. Yeah.
Are there any more questions?
Let's see.
My varifocals means it's
Oh,
difficult for me to read.
Angela says, "This is my first time stitching on 40 count. I usually stitch in hand. Should I use a hoop instead?" That's really personal preference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can, I stitch up to 56 in hand. The only stuff I do in a hoop or a frame is if I'm doing like satin stitches or something and I need both hands. I would say rather than stitch on the sampler itself to try it, do down in the corner where you've got your margin, do a half a dozen or a dozen stitches in hand and then do it in a hoop and
There's
see what you
nothing
like.
cast in stone when it comes to needlework. It's what suits you best, and you don't
Right.
have to do the same as anybody else.
Yeah.
That's right.
And it's
There's
are you
no
happy
stitching
with
fees.
what the result is?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really what it is.
And it's all about your personal enjoyment. There's no point sitting down and doing something and you're not enjoying the process. We do this for pleasure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Let's see.
I can't.
Oh,
My
Booma.
favorite-
Hi, Booma.
Hi, Boomer.
Let's see. I think that's the. Let me go back one. I'm gonna touch
It's a
this.
triple varifocal.
Yeah.
That's what I wear too. And so
Let's
I'm always
see.
doing this to try to
Would
figure
you
out where to
please
get
give
my-
some advice for 46 using the 103? Which needle do you use? On 46, I use a 28 tapestry needle.
If I'm stitching with 103, I use a short tapestry point beading needle, size 10 or size 12.
Yeah, and
You're
those are
meant-
John James.
Yeah, you're meant to use size 10, but I prefer the size 12. It suits my hand better.
Mm-hmm.
Size 12 ought to be for the Sophine.
Right, that's what I use. I use the 10 or the 12, it kind of interchangeably, and I stitch with the Surfine.
Yeah.
But that's generally what I use on when I'm
Yeah.
stitching with
You
103.
see,
Otherwise, it wants to
Yeah.
slip out of my needle.
with a needle, it's really important that the eye is right for the thread. That's really important, and I find that if I don't use the number 10 or the number 12 beading needle, the thread just keeps on falling out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
I
what
had
happens
yeah,
to
so
me.
I think
It wants to pull out of the needle
Yeah,
eye.
I think that's
Yeah.
really important.
So John James, tapestry point beading needle number 10 or 12. So in the shop's online catalog, look under needles, and in the beading needles, it'll be listed. The tapestry point ones, they're still, because the beading needles are so fine, they're still a little, they're not really
You
sharp.
can still poke
You can
yourself
still
with
poke
them.
yourself with them, but they're not sharp like a beading needle normally is to
Right.
pierce something.
And one of the reasons why it's very, very important not to use a sharp needle when you're working on linen, and especially a high cant linen. With the sharp, when you put it in, it might pierce the thread of the linen. And when you're working on high cant linens, those threads are very fine.
Yes.
And when you pierce it, it's enough to put a hole in it. If you use tapestry point and you put it in, it pushes the linen thread to the side so that your needle
Yeah.
glides through the hole.
Yes.
That's very, very important.
Yeah, and then if you're working particularly on like the 56 count, you definitely need that size,
Yeah.
because otherwise it's just too hard to get
Yeah.
to get any needle through those. Yeah.
I would say also, if you're feeling like you're getting some drag, and some people that really bothers with the 103 going through that 46 count linen, you shouldn't, but if you feel like you are, then jump up to that size 28 needle, because that will open that hole up
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
that little bit.
And then what you do to accommodate the thread, you thread your silk through the eye of the needle, you bring it back around and you thread it again, and that will hold your thread into place. Otherwise your thread will slip through.
It will slip through,
28.
yes.
I'll do a little video on that particular method.
That's a really good tip.
I do that actually for things like some of the thinner blending filaments and metallic threads
Right.
Yeah.
when they want to slip out.
Because they want to slip, it doesn't matter what you put.
No.
Isn't it wonderful being able to all chat together? Like all the little tips I've just given. I learned those tips from other needle workers because of social media.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's where I've learned all of mine. I work Saturdays at the attic, and I've learned them from
That's
Jean.
not work, that's
And-
play.
and it-
Oh no, it's work.
it is work, but it is
I worked at the
actually
attic
my
yesterday.
absolute it is my absolute weekly enjoyment is to go in on Saturdays to do that, and it's my means of supplying myself with my cross stitch love, my passion.
Well, I think, and it's also gives you, that sort of brain activity.
Yes.
In a work environment of something that you love doing. And I
Yes.
think that's really good.
Absolutely. Otherwise, I talk gibberish because I talk to my 5-year-old grandson all week.
Oh yeah, that would definitely be the
See,
case.
If I worked in the attic, it would be like working in a candy store. I would never have any wages to take home.
I don't.
I wanted to
I
share
never
this
claim
off.
to. It literally all goes back into my stitching, but that was the agreement my husband and I made so that it doesn't come out of our family budget. I work, I can spend all of my money on my stitching.
I like that idea.
I
And
like that idea.
it works great for us. So it doesn't come out of the budget.
So
I can do
to
what I
thank
want.
Nicola for doing such
Oh,
a
this is
lovely,
so beautiful.
for allowing us to bring Sarah to life. I have made her, let's see if I can get up far enough to see this. I've made her a needle case. So it says Nicola, hands across the sea samplers, has her, and these are,
And
these are,
note the colour.
it's red.
Of course.
It matches my shoes.
And then,
Oh,
then
your red
it's-
suit.
and then it has room for scissors.
There's a pair of scissors
There's a pair of
in there.
scissors in there.
Oh, thank you,
And then it
Susan.
has needles in it as well.
Thank you.
Oh,
There
so
are only
isn't
3
that
people who have the red.
Beautiful.
Do you know, it's lovely, Cathe, because I knew you when you first started.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I've got this lovely collection of your
I,
projects.
I make things and I send them to her. It's like, ooh, you'll like this.
Yeah.
It's a lovely product because I've seen the progression.
Yeah,
of
the little
your
needle
work
books and all of those things.
oh,
Yeah.
So,
Well, I have to show you, while we're showing off really cute things here, I want to show you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what Cathe sent me. She said, I'm sending you a surprise. And I went, ooh, I love surprises. And she sent me these wonderful trays. So this one says the Queen of Everything. And this one, which is the next size up, and they unsnap so they go flat in your carrying bags.
Yeah.
And
they're
I
really
have
fun.
absolutely fallen in love with using my trays.
Oh, they're great.
oh, I use a tray
Absolutely.
all the time.
Fallen in love with it because I have the beautiful hand and lock case, and that way it stays clean and pristine. And then I have my other one that is for the Sarah Rinder Stitch Along.
And it's got the birds on it.
It has the birds. And so anyway, if you want these, things like this, you can get.
So the 6-inch ones are in the online catalog because that's
Okay.
the size I do. The 9-inch ones, if you're interested in one, just send me an email. I'll add
Yeah.
them at some point.
It's all these little things.
Yeah.
Pretties.
When I sit down at the
And then
end of the day,
And
to
then there's
sit
room in
down-
there for your bird.
Yes,
So
yes.
there's our
Holds
bird.
my threads
There's our
that I'm
bird.
working with.
Yeah, when I sit down at the end of the day and I sit in my chair with my sewing table, it's all these little pretties.
Yeah.
It just gives me that euphoria. You know, it's
Yes,
you know.
euphoria. That is the
Yeah.
perfect word for it.
Yeah.
Well, I think, you're surrounding yourself with pretty things.
Yeah.
You're stitching pretty things, you're surrounding yourself with pretty. So whether
Yeah.
you're stitching on a tiny modernist, little funky thing or a Satsuma Street, really super colorful Day of
Right.
the Dead thing, or a 17th century sampler. It's like, having all the pretty accompaniments with it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like going to a fancy dinner and having all these lovely dessert trays.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is.
Yes, and the lovely hors d'oeuvres and all of it.
Yeah.
And
All
it's
these
lovely
accoutrements.
having a selection of scissors, and then you think, what am I going to use for tonight? It's like going
Yes.
back to a sweet counter and a candy counter and picking different things.
Well, in fact, I've been using my pretty little green Kohanas.
Oh yeah.
Cities with the beautiful little blue that coordinates with it, and that coordinates with my Sarah Rinder. So those are the scissors I'm using while I'm working on Sarah, and then I have the beautiful red Kohanas that I'm using while I'm working on Hannah Campbell.
Yeah.
And
if you're interested in the Kohanas, Jean at the Attic sells them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so
Let's see. And Jody says, assuming no over 1, would 2 over 1 on 28 count provide a similar look as 1 over 2 on 56 count? Yeah, it would
Yes.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. So if you didn't want to do the lettering, which is the only over 1 part in Sarah, and you wanted to do a motif or something there, you could do the whole rest of the thing over 1. This is over 1 on 38 count. This is the little tiny bird. So that I have started. That's over 1 on 28 count, as compared to the 38, as opposed to the over 2 on 38 count. So yeah, if you did it on the 28, that would be the same as doing it over 2 on the 56.
and the 38 count is not vintage maple sugar.
This is filbert.
Filbert, yes.
This is one of the legacy linens.
And
Yes.
the legacy linens.
Aren't they
Yeah.
glorious?
This is
Yes.
these are Italian. The legacy, most of
Yeah.
the legacy linens are Italian.
I have stitched a few. I have a designer that I stitched the models for her, and we've done them, a couple of them on the legacies, because they're just beautiful to stitch on, and 2, they're easier to get a hold of than some of the overdyes.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's kind of like the whole supply chain thing.
Yes.
It's
It's
a lot of people
It
I
is.
think have assumed that by now things would be fixed, and it's like if
No.
we're back to some semblance of what normal was before COVID by 2025, I'll be surprised.
Yeah.
Because I think the supply chain is just still going to be messed
And
up.
I
for a
think
while.
as well, in COVID, so many people went back to
Yes.
yes,
so the demand surged and the supply went down.
yes, and that created this backlog.
Yeah.
I know we had one line of fabric at the shop that we finally received in, and it took us a year and a half to get it, because and it's still all COVID related, and people hate hearing that, but that's
Well, for
just the reality.
For most of 2020 and a good chunk of 2021, particularly the mills that were making the fabrics, the base fabrics, a lot of them were at very low production
Yeah.
levels. And then particularly with linen, you've got issues like the war in Ukraine.
Right.
Because a lot of the flax crop came from that part of the world, specifically from Ukraine. And so that's affected their supply chain as well. Which given the choice of, I'm happy to not have linen to stitch if it means the Ukrainians are getting what they need to be able to
Survive.
survive. But
The other thing with demand, what I find is that if somebody who's never stitched a reproduction sampler before stitches one, reproduction samplers become more and more addictive. So not only have we had this surge in people cross-stitching, we've had this surge in people
Yes.
stitching reproduction samplers.
Yes.
And of course, with reproduction samplers, we're looking for the over-dyed linens. We're looking
Yes.
for a certain colour range of threads. So we've just had this huge
Yep.
surge in demand.
Well, and
the
social media
industry's-
has definitely
Oh,
made a
absolutely.
big impact
But
there, because
The
you build a
industry hasn't
community.
caught up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
hasn't. I've had a lot of people go, oh, well, this has been a dying art. I said it maybe was, but it is
Yeah.
not right now. It is a booming art,
That's right.
and that is truly causing one of our supply issues.
Yeah.
It's because so many more people have decided to come into the world.
Well, the
of
finishing
stitching.
company, so we have a finishing company in the town that I live in, my shop is in, and for 2021 and 2022, their lead time for getting stuff done had gone from pre-COVID, say a month, to almost a year.
Yeah.
Because they were getting, people were going back into their stash. And whether it was a cross-stitch stocking or a needlepoint stocking or a pillow or whatever, ornaments in particular, it's like instead of, say, getting a shipment in from a shop, because they do shop for needlework shops all over the country, instead of getting a shipment in that had, say, maybe 20 pieces in it, it might have come and had 200 pieces in it.
Wow.
And they said it's actually slowed down now. People kind of caught up with what
their
they had in their backlog.
My friend
And
said,
they've gone back to work, or they're not working.
Exactly.
that's exactly what my friend has said. They had this huge surge because people had time to finish things they'd started.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of that with people buying supplies to finish off stuff. Like, I have the threads, I have the chart, but now I need the fabric or some other component of that. But
Do you know what? It's so nice doing a floss tube
yeah,
with somebody else. I'm normally there all by myself.
Isn't it? I know. It's fun to have somebody to talk to and to bounce off of. When we did that Hannah Campbell kickoff,
Yeah.
Cathe contacted me in the morning and said, hey, would you like to use StreamYard? And I will be your wingman. And I'm like, yes. And so it was so much fun because I've always been this disembodied voice
yeah.
because I've just shown what I was stitching on and then talked. So I thought it'll be really fun for people to
Yeah,
actually see.
I think
my
it is fun when you get the
face
kind
and
of
see
see
And
that.
we're planning on doing a Hannah Campbell one, and I'm
Yeah.
now going to go to the airport, and I hope to
Yeah.
God I get my bags with my samplers.
So we're going to sign off. We will actually go live again sometime over the weekend once we have Sarah
Touch wood,
and
touch wood, touch
Yes,
wood.
yes, absolutely.
and we'll talk a bit more about the model, compare her to fabrics and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So I'll
Oh.
post a note when we figure out when that's going to be, but we definitely want to get everybody started today. So if you've been holding off stitching, go for it.
Yes, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, and thanks for
This
being
is
so
so
patient.
fun.
And for all of you waiting on supplies, yes, they are still coming in.
Access,
Access is still, is still spooling small 103 for me. Pat's still dying Lakeside Linen for me. It's like
as fast
Yeah.
as
It's a never-ending
getting
process.
them, they're coming out.
a wave of stuff comes in. We get the kits. We finish getting the kits put together, and then we ship them out. So
Yeah. So it's a process, but it's
like a
working.
conveyor belt, but
Yeah.
sometimes there's gaps in the conveyor belt. So
So anyway.
thank you so much
Okay.
for joining us. And if you
Bye-bye.
guys have any
Bye-bye.
questions,
Yep.
bye.